So Hare Krishna everybody, welcome back. So good to see you all. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. So we'll continue with our Bhagavad-Gita. We're starting a new chapter today, chapter 14. In the last session we talked about chapter 13, which was nature, enjoyer and consciousness. We talked about the soul and the super soul and how everything is under the control of the super soul, and we get the false conception of being the enjoyer, which is why we are here in this material world. So this is this whole action or the drama in this material world is carried out by forces of nature, the three forces of nature, primeval forces of nature that Krishna is going to talk about in chapter 14. He mentions that a few other places in the Bhagavad-Gita, like in the third chapter, he says, Prakate kriyamanani gune karmani sarvasha ahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. That everything in this nature, this material world, is carried out by gune karmani. That guna means the three forces. So it's carried out by these forces of nature. But the living entity falsely thinks that he is doing everything. And also then in the 13th chapter, he also talks about this gunas in the 22nd verse. He introduces the guna again. So it's very important to understand what these gunas are and what is their role in this material world, what is their impact on us. So that's what we'll explore today. So let's first read chapter 14 a little bit and then we'll come to our presentation. Chandra Mohan Opreti, he needs to go to Hindi class. Okay, all done. Then we'll go to so this is chapter 14. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Again I shall declare to you this supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained the supreme perfection." So although it seems like this knowledge is about the three modes of nature, but it is very important to understand it. Otherwise, in this material world, we don't know what hit us. And when we get trapped in a situation, we need to know how to get out of that. So for that, the knowledge of these modes is very essential. That's why Krishna is saying this, the supreme wisdom. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature like my own. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation or disturbed at the time of dissolution. So it helps us to attain Krishna's transcendental nature, knowledge of these modes. And one is not affected by any kind of creation or dissolution, which means we are not affected by gaining something or losing something. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadhamyaham sambhava sarvabhutanam tato bhavati Bharata. So this Brahman is not the Brahman effulgence coming from Krishna's body. This Brahman, this total material substance is also called Brahman. It's the Mahatattva. We talked about that. So the total aggregate of all the material substance is called Mahatattva. It's also called as Brahman here by Krishna. Is the source of birth because Krishna impregnates that Brahman with the living entities. And he also impregnates this Brahman with the three modes of nature. And therefore, then things start happening and everything is produced from that. So all the species of life, they are produced from matter, which is agitated by Krishna's glance. Sarva yonishu kaunteya murtaya sambhavantiya tasam brahma mahadyonir aham bija pradapitaha. It should be understood that all species of life, O son of Kunti, are made possible by birth in this material nature, and that I am the seed-giving father. So very important verse here. Krishna is establishing his relationship with every single living entity, not only in this universe, but in all the universes. Because he's talking about this material nature, which all the universes, they share the same material nature. There may be different varieties, different creations, but the material substance is the same in all the material universes. So, and the other very important thing is that he's saying all the species of life are made possible by birth here. So that leads to this whole discussion about that all the species are, in one sense, already created by Krishna. This whole conception that the species, one species evolves into another species, is not on a material plane, is not supported by the Vedic understanding. The Vedic understanding talks about the evolution of consciousness. So a soul will migrate from one body to another or one species to another. So the species are just like apartments or buildings in which the soul keeps moving from. Depending on their consciousness, the soul will move from higher or lower consciousness. But the species are already created. It's not that the species are created as we move along in time in a universe. They're already there. And this whole question of, like sometimes we say the species has gone extinct on our planet Earth. It simply means that that particular species is probably no longer visible here, but it doesn't mean that species has been wiped out from this material universe, because nobody can create species and nobody can wipe out species other than Krishna. So the species is already there, maybe in some other part of the universe that we don't see, or in some other universe, but it's never wiped out. There are 8.4 million species of life that the Bhagavatam, the Vedas explain. And these 8.4 million species of life, they are scattered throughout all the universes. So in our particular universe, there may be a smaller segment or section of those species of life. Not all the species may be present. What to speak on our tiny little Earth planet, which is just one tiny planet in this giant universe. So this 8.4 million species, they are divided into different species in animal kingdom, plant kingdom, aquatic kingdom, birds, humans. Humans are also like 400,000 different species of humans. It just means that humans in different states of consciousness. So even in our planet, we'll see different humans. Some are very advanced, some are living a very primitive life. It's not that the humans evolved from like being hunter-gatherers and living in the jungle and they slowly evolved into very advanced. That's not true, because Lord Brahma and all these higher species, they're already there. So they're also humans because they have very advanced human body. And from them comes, from Brahma comes all the other species of life. So it's the Vedic paradigm is one of devolution. That means from higher species, the soul moves from higher species to lower species as it journeys through this material world. Or it can also move from lower species to higher species as it makes advancement in spiritual life. So for example, human beings, we are in the middle category of human species. The demigods and the sages in the higher planets, like the Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, they are in a very higher species of humans. And the humans in the lower planets, like Patala and all those other planets, they are in the lower species of humans. So now Krishna is going to describe these three modes, because from this everything happens. Sattvam rajas tama iti guna prakriti sambhava nivadnanti mahabaho dehi dehi namabhyam. Material nature consists of three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity comes in contact with nature, O mighty armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. So very important concept here. The material nature itself, because sometimes we wonder, what is material nature? We see it all around us, but it's hard to find what the material nature is made of. What is matter made of? And scientists are doing a lot of research trying to find matter is made of atoms, and then you go further into subatomic particles and bosons and and on those even finer particles. And it's harder to pinpoint what are they actually made of. And Krishna is revealing the secret here that matter is ultimately made of these three forces. Of modes means like forces. You can think of them forces or energies. That's another way to look at them. But something that it's a force that conditions the soul. That is the nature of these forces. They condition our every aspect of our being. And just like when somebody drinks something like alcohol, then the alcohol has an influence on the person, right? Or if you are suffering from a disease, and if you take the right medicine, then the medicine has an effect on you. So similarly, these forces, they have an effect on us. They dictate all our movements in this material world. So let's see what Krishna says further about these modes. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. So the primary characteristic of these three modes is that they condition. So the quality of the mode of goodness is that it is purer than the passion and ignorance. It is illuminating. It brings about light or knowledge, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. So the sinful reactions, they primarily exist in passion and ignorance, when we are too much focused on ourselves, enjoying or going into darkness. That's when sinful reactions come about. But in the mode of goodness, there's also a sense of conditioning. So we'll discuss that a little bit later, what that conditioning is. We basically start feeling that everything is good. When things are going good, mode of goodness kind of creates that sense of peace. I am peaceful. Things are going in order around me. And then that urgency to come out of this material world kind of fades away. One becomes kind of conditioned by the sense of happiness, this feeling of I'm okay here, and I have enough knowledge to be okay in this world. So that's the sense of conditioning that is created by mode of goodness. So that's like a downside of mode of goodness. The mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings, O son of Kunti, and because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. So this is the nature of passion and Raja. Raja means unlimited desires and longings to enjoy this matter. That is the high mark of this mode of passion. This is what mode of passion makes us do, to engage in material fruitive actions, that I can do something and enjoy the fruits of my actions. So one is motivated to do more and more things. That is Rajogun. Rajogun means to create something. One creates something in this mode of Rajogun. And one wants to enjoy that creation. Then he describes Tama, or mode of ignorance. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness born of ignorance is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The results of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. And the mode of darkness out of the three is the worst, because it completely deludes the living entity. The living entity forgets who it is, and it's not even inclined to do any action. It just like either it does things of madness or indolence and sleep, which is laziness and sleep. So kind of withdrawing from this world. A passionate person engages this world, tries to exploit this world, but a person in the mode of ignorance is kind of lost. He's completely lost, and it takes to dark habits. Now Krishna describes what is the effect of these modes on us. O son of Bharata, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, passion conditions one to fruitive action, and ignorance, covering one's knowledge, binds one to madness. So this is what happens to the living entity. In mode of goodness, one is conditioned by happiness. In mode of passion, one is conditioned by fruitive action. Condition means that you really like that, being in that place. You're very comfortable doing that, and you want to do it more and more. That's what conditioning means, like air conditioning. The air is conditioned. That's not the real nature of air, but it is conditioned by that thermodynamic energy of coolness. So that's why it's called air conditioned. It's a conditioned air. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. O son of Bharata, sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and at other times, ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there is always competition for supremacy. So it's a very important concept here that somebody may think that, okay, mode of passion, goodness, and ignorance, I can just choose one or stay in one situation. But Krishna is saying it is impossible to do that in this material world, because you may be in the mode of goodness for some time, but then that mode of goodness will be defeated by or overcome by passion and ignorance. And this cycle will continue. And a prime example of that is like when we wake up in the morning, we take a shower and we feel so fresh and happy and full of light. So we are in mode of goodness at that time. But as the day progresses, we get into the mode of passion. Now I have to like drive to work and start doing things. That is mode of passion. And end of the day, we get tired and we come back home and do some other chores. And by the end of it, we're totally tired and exhausted. And we just like to go to sleep. So that is mode of ignorance. So even through one day, we experience all the three modes at different times of the day. So this is what it means, that the modes, they kind of drive us in different states of consciousness. And you cannot stay at one mode. The manifestation of the mode of goodness can be experienced when all the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. So that is a symptom of mode of goodness, that all the gates means all the senses of our body. They are attracted by things which are in goodness. That's what is meant by the gates of the body are illuminated by knowledge. A person seeks knowledge. The eyes, the nose, the sense of touch, taste, they are attracted by things which are in knowledge, or things which increase our knowledge, increase higher knowledge. O chief of the Bharatas, when there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desire and hankering develop. So this is the nature of mode of passion. No, I'm just reading the verses. This is what the mode of passion does. Great attachment. You'll see people are attached to money, or people are attached to power or position or whatever they're doing. So much so that they will even give up their life for that attachment. And this is great attachment. Like you see some thieves, they will risk their life to break into a bank and try to steal millions of dollars, because there's so much attachment for money. They even risk their life. Fruitive activity, intense endeavor. People work for hours and hours. Some people, like on Wall Street, they work 80-hour weeks. Some lawyers, they work 80, 90 hours a week. They're working so intensely because they want to achieve something. So what gives them that energy to burn their body and mind day in and day out? That's the mode of passion that forces them to achieve things, and then the uncontrollable desires, do more and more. When there is an increase in the mode of ignorance, O son of Kuru, darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion are manifested. So we already discussed that. Now Krishna is going to describe the destination of people who are in different modes. So let's take a break and we'll go to the presentation. Then we'll come back to the slides again, this verses again. So let me stop sharing here.
Did you tell everyone about the Friday?
Not yet. I was waiting for everybody to join.
Because sometimes people leave early. So
okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we just wanted to let you know that this coming Friday, I know you guys are anyways very regular, but if at all, if you had any other plans, mark it in your calendar, because we have a very, very special guest who's going to be coming on Friday. He's someone that we've known for many, many years. He's a disciple of Prabhupada, and what can we say about him?
He's a powerhouse of spiritual knowledge and spiritual energy and kindness and all the good qualities that you can imagine in a saintly person. So.
And for Delia, this is Achyuta Bhava's spiritual master. So he'll be speaking on the 18th chapter on surrender. So you can yeah, take full advantage of his.
And invite any friends and anybody else you'd like to. So the modes of nature, this is how kind of this picture describes how the modes of nature are under Krishna's control, but the modes of nature are moving every living entity like a puppeteer moves the puppet. We are kind of moving, thinking that I'm doing things, but actually they are in turn, in reality, they are being done by the modes of nature. And then we'll come to that. So as I was saying earlier, that how everything is made of these three modes. What is the fiber of matter? What is the real constitution of matter? Is these three modes. So initially, when everything starts taking shape in this material universe, so the first thing that is manifested is false ego. From the pure consciousness of the living entity, the first thing that manifests is false ego, because false ego is what is needed to glue the pure soul to this material world, and that's what is needed for the pure soul to think that I can enjoy in this material world separate from Krishna. So false ego is created first, and then the three modes of nature are generated from Krishna's glance. And then the false ego interacts with the mode of goodness, and from that our material mind is created, and all the presiding demigods who basically run this universe, they are created. When the mode of passion interacts with false ego, then it produces intelligence, our material intelligence, and the activity, the fruitive activity that is created from mode of passion. And when false ego interacts with mode of ignorance, then it produces all the gross objects like earth, water, fire, air, space, our sense objects, the sense, and things like that. So all the gross things are created by mode of ignorance. So that's why it is said that everything is made up of these three modes. And not only that, the three modes, they penetrate, or they reside in everything. So that the modes reside in our mind, they reside in our intelligence, they reside in our senses. So they are everywhere. So, go ahead.
So in case if we have ever wondered what's going on, right? We want to be a certain person, but then it seems like there are certain forces acting upon us. And as a result, we feel that we're sort of pre-wired to think a certain way or feel a certain way or act in a certain way. And in fact, people who know us, they can almost sometimes, like, people who really know us well, they know that in certain situation, this is how I'm going to respond or react or whatever, right? So, as we just described, and we'll talk more about what these modes actually are, but there is a devotee psychologist who has actually created a Vedic personality index. It's a test, it's a questionnaire. So we were thinking that before we jump into this, if you guys would maybe like to, it's a short questionnaire, and it'll immediately tell you, sort of like what modes, one is really made up of, like in percentage, how much satogun, how much mode of goodness, how much mode of passion, how much mode of ignorance. So we thought that might be a fun thing for us to do it. It won't take so much time, maybe at most 7 minutes or so. And then we come back, and then we'll talk about, what those results mean for us.
So please go ahead, and if you have a browser, you can go to this website.
No, we cannot send it to them, huh?
No, they already see this.
Oh.
I can also type it in the chat box.
Yeah.
I'm putting it in the chat box. You can go to this website, and then you have to do a quick registration, and then you can answer some questions. And
all right, if you guys want to do this on your own time,
yeah,
that's also fine. I mean, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do this on your own time? Or should we just do it, take 10 minutes and do it right now?
I'm curious now, so
it would be fun. Okay, then go ahead. Yeah, it'll be fun
to share.
Yeah.
Or if only if anybody wants to share. Not everybody has to share.
Yeah.
Only if you like to share, then you're welcome to share.
And of course, it's a little simplistic.
Yeah.
I still feel that it's a little simplistic, but I think it's still fun to look at it. Maybe while they're doing this, I can just do the kirtan. Okay, not. Okay. Performed. Yeah, that would be nice. That's what I'm saying. I could just do a quick kirtan. Let me do it. Don't
How
worry.
will you do it?
Over here, wait here. I won't use any.
Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera.
This thing has to be spread, I think. So that way.
I think most people are done.
I missed this kirtan, and we haven't heard it for so long.
Wow, we did.
I've never heard it. This is the first time. I love it.
Yeah, Mataji has a great voice. I mean, she used to sing on every Friday night when we used to meet.
So jealous.
Krishna. Thank you.
All right. Anybody like to share what they found out?
Yeah, I got 64% goodness
Wow.
and 15% of tamas
Oh, okay.
and 21% of passion.
Everybody can type. I think that'll be good.
Tahini,
Okay.
Satagul 44. Yeah, it's always a mixture. It'll always be a mixture. Wow. Everyone is predominantly in Satogul. No wonder we're. Very nice.
I tried that thing.
Hmm.
I'll send it in the chat.
Yeah, it's just a fun thing,
Yeah.
really. And
And if probably if all of you did this in the morning, maybe Satoguna would be even higher.
okay.
I feel like I lost a lot of points on the like being emotionally centered kind of questions. Because for me, it just feels like my emotions are like woo all the time. But I don't know if it's 100% accurate because it said like, oh, I'm good at handling my emotions, and I was like, I don't know. I put like a 4, you know. But most of the time, my like confusions and my processes have to do with spiritual things, like I'm not getting confused or emotional over mundane things. It's just I'm like, oh, why is this process so hard? And then
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes. And it's it's hard to understand. And plus, like I said, like people do these Ayurveda dosha tests. It's like, how do you put like a number sometimes? Is it 4? Is it 5? And and like there's so many things, like you're saying, that those emotional distress that we feel over spiritual subject matter, can that really technically be put in that category? So that's why this is just not to be taken too seriously. It just a way to understand that these are some of the criteria, right, that can take us in different places. So thank you.
what is the significance of the question, I often neglect my responsibilities to my friends?
That would be often neglect. Let's see, again, you put it in a spiritual context, right? So it becomes completely different. But materially, what would that mean?
Like, am I a giver or?
Am I a giver? Am I responsible, I guess? If I'm responsible, that would be in Satogun. If I'm irresponsible, is it because I'm selfish? Then it would be Rajo, mode of passion. And if it's simply because I'm lazy and I tend to forget, then that would be ignorance, right? So again, depending on what creates that forgetfulness, right? If it's because I really don't want to help because, hey, I want to, excel, right? Or something.
That's Rajas.
Yeah.
Maybe this will give us a basis for trying to improve, where he can make improvements.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if that helped, Delia. I think it's hard to really take it too seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to
there are
show that
some
we are made up of these 3.
Go ahead, Delia.
But yeah, there are some questions that you don't exactly know how to answer, but it's fun. Yeah.
The keyboard that she was playing is called harmonium.
Oh, harmonium. Yeah.
Do we born with, like, everybody born with a different percentage of this, or do we, like, with our choices we make, we change this, or we haven't? Is this our control to change it?
Yeah, we are born with a certain combination, and then we can change them. That's the whole process of improving ourselves. And if you see all the rules and regulations that are given in all the different scriptures and cultures, is to primarily bring us from passion and ignorance more and more towards goodness, right? Don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, help others, be truthful. All these things are meant to actually bring us more and more to goodness. That's because from goodness, it's easier to understand spiritual life, because goodness is the platform of knowledge. So yes, we can improve them on a daily basis, on every moment basis, actually.
Also, these 3 gunas, they're continuously changing from like different points, phases of our life. It's also changing from like morning till evening.
Yeah.
Like right now, like that's why when we wake up in the morning, that's supposed to be predominantly sattva. Daytime is predominantly rajas. Evening is tama, right? So it's like, we'll talk about it, like how, it's not set.
But as far as our personality, we always, that's why Krishna is talking about these things, how we can practically become more and more in goodness. That's what the bottom line is. Okay, I'm sharing the screen again. So this is where we are. So these ropes, as we talked about, another meaning of the word, Krishna uses the word guna to describe these modes, but the word guna in Sanskrit also means ropes, or affection. Guna also means affection. So the ropes is a good example, because ropes, we see how ropes are made from stranding together different smaller threads and bigger threads. And so let's just take a look at this, how a rope is made. And if you take a single thread, then it's very weak. You can just break it. But if you start knotting together more and more threads together, and then slowly it becomes like a big rope, then you can't just break it. It becomes very strong, and so strong that it can really hold very powerful things together.
So as you can see, these are such thin ropes. Okay, you see how it becomes like such a thick rope. Just single. Here you go. See, you can see how one single strand is going in, and it's becoming like this thick rope that can bind anything, right? And we talk about how even such a powerful thing as a big vessel, like a ship, can be held together by a rope. You can see how, but it all starts with these very thin threads. And just by bringing, so the same way these gunas, they are like these little threads. They're only three. One would say, oh, they're just three. But there's so many permutations and combinations of these three. And when they all come together, they create this great force that binds us to this material.
Other way to think of it is like the small choices that we make throughout our day and our lives. You can think of them as this tiny threads. Oh, this was a small thing. But all these small things, they start coming together and creating this big binding force. Ties us down.
Somebody could say, well, is this a good place to talk about how somebody could say, well, this is a rope that is made up of gold, or a rope made up of silver.
Yeah, say that. So like how the ropes become so powerful that even like these big ships, they are actually tied down to the shore with the help of these ropes. So these ropes are kind of almost become like unbreakable.
And so, like sometimes, people in the material world, like just like right now we took this test and we figured out, okay, mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance. And we might feel like, oh, wow, I'm in mode of goodness. But the wisdom, the bhakti text, they describe that all the three modes, all the three gunas are just three ropes made of different material. So one is a golden chain, the other is a silver chain, and the third would be an iron chain, right? So all three are chains. So even the mode of goodness, even though it is better than the other two, but in itself, that can also be a cause of bondage. And so we'll talk more about that as we go along, that how could mode of goodness be a chain? But it is described that all three are ropes.
Just like in a prison, a prisoner can be in like a first-class cell, a second-class cell, or in a solitary. But if a prisoner is satisfied that, okay, I am in the first-class cell and life is good, I don't have to come out, then he'll be stuck in the prison. The goal is to come out of the prison, not to stay in the first-class cell.
And so this is again another example that is very, very powerful to illustrate that how such a tiny thing, the living entity, is actually a very powerful spark of the supreme consciousness, right? So it has all the qualities of Krishna, and yet somehow it comes within the control of these forces. So why is that? So it is described that the way an elephant is actually trained is that when an elephant is very small, then it's actually tied, as you can see, to a small little stick and a thin rope. And every day, the guy will bring him and he will tie him there. Then later, the elephant actually becomes really, really big. And we have actually seen how big elephants can even upturn even a car or like a big vehicle. And we actually saw a video of that, remember? How it's like powerful. And yet the elephant is so convinced that he has to be bound. So every evening he'll bring him and he'll tie him. And for him, what is the value of this tiny little thread? But then he still stays bound to this little stick. So in the same way, the living entity is actually very powerful, but then it just, because it doesn't think that it can break away from the control of these modes. So that's why it stays, right? Also, it doesn't know how, right? How? Krishna says that Devi Esha Gunamai, that this is very difficult to overcome, right? But it starts with desire.
And so like the three primary colors, they make secondary colors, and that's 9. And then from 9, you get the tertiary colors like 81 and then 81 times 3. So just like that, these 3 modes, there are innumerable combinations of different things are made from these 3 modes. And it's impossible to count them all. And we can see how these modes, they have an impact on us. And then one example is music in these 3 different modes. Music can be in the mode of goodness, music can be in the mode of passion, music can be in the mode of ignorance.
Actually, everything, before we get into that, everything that we interact with, the time of the day, the place that we live in, right? The kind of food that we eat, the kind of clothes, the kind of music that we hear, everything has an impact on our consciousness. And it's converse too, that the kind of consciousness we have will also drive us to choose a certain kind of music. So there's actually an article which I was just reading today, which showed that how the kind of, people can actually predict our personality based on the kind of music we listen to. And it also talked about how there are studies that show that the kind of music you listen to has an impact on the kind of personality that one develops. So again, making that same point about this association.
So just an example of how music changes our perception.
Right. So you can see in this movie, in this video clip, there are all these different music, and the scene is exactly the same. But just by changing the music, our experience of that movie clip completely changes. Probably this is the original version.
Yeah.
Our species of rare form has been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean, this thing.
I think let's fast forward. So this was scary. Oh, this was suspense.
Species of rare form has been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean, this thing.
Happy music.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is actually quite similar also. Okay, dramatic. I think we already saw. Oh. Okay, we get the idea. Let's watch emotional.
This is like goodness.
Yeah.
Our species of rare form has been extinct since the Cretaceous period. I mean,
Okay,
this
so you get the point. I think that it's.
Movie time.
So we can see that how different kinds of music it actually impacts us, and so like Anshul was asking, are we kind of set with these modes? But we can actually, by making choices that are conducive for a certain mode, we can actually influence our own consciousness, and that's why association is so powerful. And what happened?
And also, depending on what music is playing in our own head, we a situation appears different to us.
Mm.
So that's another way to look at it, is we want to play the goodness music in our head in any situation.
Right. Modes is also like a lens through which we see the world.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And so depending on what mode we are in, that's what we see. And I think the next example is actually a very relevant example for this, exactly the same point.
So we lost people instead of us telling.
Okay.
So 3 people go to the forest, and one person, he just goes and finds, so it's so peaceful to sleep here. So he goes and sleeps. Another person, he sees, wow, this is a great opportunity to make some money, cut the forest and sell the wood. And so he engages in that activity. And then the third person, he finds it a very
Peaceful.
place for meditation. So who is in what mode?
Sleeping person is in ignorance. Person cutting down the tree is passion. Person meditating is goodness.
That was easy.
Yeah. So 3 people, they enter the same forest, but they have a completely different, because of their particular mode in which they are in, they actually see the same forest in 3 different ways. Right. So this.
This is another story that how we react to a particular situation, especially something unexpected or something which is kind of a loss to us. So how do we react to that? That is also driven by the modes we are in. So this is the story of a cap seller.
He became very tired. He decided to sleep under a big tree.
Why did you just
and
know
rest
that?
for a while.
Too much noise.
Soon he slept off. There were many monkeys on the big tree. They saw the cat seller was sleeping under the tree. Hey friends, look at those wonderful cats. And the monkeys came down.
So monkeys are definitely in passion, right?
Ignorance.
And ignorance.
Took the cats from the cat seller's back and wore them. Then they climbed the tree again. When the cat seller woke up, he was shocked to see his
So-
cat empty.
So here is an opportunity for us to think about responses, right? So, we have different ways in which we could respond to the situation, right? So one person could get really, really angry.
So what are the different responses that can happen? This cap seller, he just lost all his caps. Now, what are the different ways he can respond to?
And what would those responses,
What will be the outcome of that?
and what mode would that indicate also, right?
He could plead with the monkeys to give it back.
Okay,
And
that is one. That is one. He could get angry.
Yeah, he can curse and just
Curse.
leave. And cursing his fate basically.
Cursing his fate. What mode that would be in?
Ignorance.
Ignorance. Very nice.
He can try to bring it back. That will be the passion.
You can do what?
He can fight.
He can try to bring it back by hook or crook or by taking some means, but I need to get it back. So it shows the passion towards getting the job done.
You can offer something else.
He can give bananas to the monkey. Monkey will enjoy the banana and he will get his caps back.
It looks like Vishal, you really like bananas.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
So that would be in the mode of goodness, right?
Yeah, a banana a day keeps the doctor away.
So
Okay.
My cats! Where are my cats? Please, give my cats.
We can't see the
We can't see
screen.
the sharing.
we cannot see. They have to see this. This is so cute. It's
Sorry.
a sweet, sweet animation. I think you'll have to rewind it a little.
Then they climbed the tree again. When the cat Santa woke up, he was shocked to see his bag empty. Where are my caps? Where are my caps? To his surprise, he saw the monkeys were wearing them. Hey, monkeys, give my caps! Give my caps! You want your caps? Well, he thought of an idea to get back all of his caps. So he threw up his own cap in the air. The monkeys also threw up their caps. Then he threw the cap on the ground. The monkeys also threw down their caps.
That is so cute.
Cat Santa collected all the caps, put them back in his bag, and went away happily. Goodbye.
Look at the faces.
Wisdom is better.
So this wisdom, this place of wisdom is actually the place of sattva, right? So one is that one could get depressed or one could get angry. Those would be ignorance and passion. But then this person, he actually kept his cool, and he thought from a place of clarity, and that is a place of Satogun. So this story, actually, I'd like to give the credit to Shringar, who actually, actually shared it with the kids, and we just absolutely loved it. So here is another story, which also demonstrates
how we react to it.
How we react in a sort. We don't have to watch this.
Yeah.
So it's the similar kind of a story where there is a crow who's very, very thirsty and sees this pot of water, a pitcher of water, and tries to get in it, but the water level is very low, so doesn't know how to get it. So, the crow is actually very clever. And so again, same thing, instead of responding with anger or being bitter about it, he thinks about it, and then he puts like stones in that pitcher, and then the water level rises and he's able to drink it. So we can see that Satogun actually allows us, when we talk about that, that space between a stimuli and a response, taking that moment to pause, that pause is actually a place of goodness. A person who doesn't have goodness is going to just be continuously in this mode of like reacting, right? And of course, another person, like we see with Dhritarashtra, that would be ignorance, where a person continuously feels like a victim and is depressed and unhappy and just like really, like low about life. But a person of goodness actually responds to it with clarity and with the proper understanding of what would be the best, that introspection, right?
So Krishna is describing these three different qualities of these three modes. Sattva is balance, harmony, positive, peace, and you can read Rajas. So this is how these gunas affect us, and this is how they bind us. And tomorrow we'll discuss how different things, Krishna describes different things in different modes, so we can identify in my life what are the things that I have which are in mode of goodness or passion or ignorance, and how can I adjust so I can live in more and more and more of goodness.
And of course, just to make this point, I don't know if you already made it, the creation, destruction, and maintenance, those three things are actually conducted by these three modes. So whenever we create something that requires passion, right? And same thing when something is destroyed, that happens under ignorance. And when something is maintained, that requires goodness. So in reality, in our life, we cannot really do away with these three modes. As long as we are in this material world, we do need sleep, right? We do need to work, and daytime is a day of activity, and of course there's Satogun. So devotee learns how to navigate within these three modes and use these three modes in the service of Krishna. And our real goal is actually not to get stuck in either of the three, because that's a big topic in itself. Why do you think that all the three modes, like we can understand why ignorance would be a problem, why passion would be a problem, but why do you think goodness is a problem?
Because it's tainted with some bit of ignorance and passion. It's not pure.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. It's because it is tainted with passion and ignorance. What else? There's another reason why goodness is not good enough.
Because when you're good to someone, there is an expectation that they should also be good to you. Is that the reason, like, you develop the kind of expectation that you should get back that goodness from others?
Right, just like what he's saying, that it's mixed with passion and some ignorance. That's right.
Yeah, and that's more like a fruity mentality that kind of comes under passion.
That would be under passion.
This could be also considered as a weakness by others.
It might be considered a weakness by others. Yeah.
But also, you told us the answer earlier that if someone is in the mode of goodness and things go well for you, then you think, oh, that's fine. I don't have to do, I could just stay here.
Yeah, exactly. Because goodness binds us. Actually, goodness has a very strong binding effect on us. Just like, a person who goes to the airport. So goodness is good because it can act as a launching pad for pure goodness or purified goodness or spiritual goodness. But also, if, like, say you go to the airport and you just like wander around in the airport. So an airport is a place from where you can actually take a flight. But if someone just simply goes to the airport, then they are as far from the destination as a person who is maybe, like 50 miles away, right? So goodness is only good if it acts as a launching pad for spiritual goodness. If one just gets content, and that is actually one of the pitfalls of goodness, is that a person feels extremely peaceful and good and happy and content. And so then they can get caught up in that quest for contentment and satisfaction. And just
they like to just
hang around
in this material world. And many times when you meet such people and ask them, then they say, I'm good.
Everything is good, because they're following piety and life is peaceful and stuff. So yeah, so that's why goodness is not good enough. But at the same time, we do need goodness so that our mind is clear enough to pursue spiritual life.
So we want to be in goodness without being conditioned by goodness.
Yeah. And so what we're striving for is a state of consciousness which is past or beyond these three modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Because the best of goodness in this material world is actually contaminated by passion and ignorance. And therefore, if you remember, we had a discussion about qualities. Any quality in this material world, even though we may see people who are acting in a very tolerant way, or all these wonderful qualities that we may see, the reason why they are not on a steady platform is because it's all acting within the realm of the three modes, which is always in competition with each other. So, all right, so Lakadash is showing me the time. So we'll continue tomorrow. And we actually, one thing before we can, we are now thinking that because we are finishing this Friday actually is the culmination of our Bhagavad-Gita. We finally made it. It's so, and so we wanted.
It was like the answer for me because, when it comes, like when I get super happy, that's where like everything just completely falls apart, because it's like soon as something excites me, it's like something comes over me to the point where I can't even control the excitement. And like by the time I realized like, oh, I overreacted, or it was just too much, it's like like I might have forgotten to do something, or it's just like it takes me so long to get back to calm. And I never really never understood what that would be considered until I really until we were talking about that today. So that was just a reflection I had about that, and how looking at that, I can see how that can be like, like it's almost like a blessing and a curse at the same time, because when you're in the mode of goodness, you're not thinking of negative thoughts. You're not thinking anything that will kind of drag you down into the mode of ignorance. But at the same time, feeling that bliss, it almost reminds your soul of, a little bit of, what your spiritual nature is like. It's almost like you get a taste of your spiritual nature when you're in the mode of goodness. But if you cling on to that in the material realm, then it'll almost put you right back into the mode of ignorance. It'll be like, like parallel to each other, because you will begin to, in an ignorant way, the delusion of experiencing your spiritual nature, not realizing that you're still in the material plane.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
yes, it does.
Yeah. And that's why, I think this whole process of bhakti can help us, get to transcendental plane. So thank you.
Thank
So
you.
we'll
Also, we'll see you
Okay,
tomorrow.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yep, Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.